We're live now. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this very special event, special conversation with our guest filmmakers as part of MexDocs, recent Mexican documentaries that it's streaming right now and through next Wednesday, December 16th. And the series is screening four amazing nonfiction films from Mexico. And we're very pleased to have the filmmakers with us today. MexDocs is presented by Cinema Tropical, and actually my name is Carlos Gutierrez. I am the director of Cinema Tropical, and it's also presented MexDocs by the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at New York University. It is also made possible with the support of the Department of Spanish and Portuguese Languages and Cultures at NYU, who they're also actually sponsoring this panel discussion, and special thanks to Jens Anderman, professor at NYU. And MexDocs is also made possible by the support of CUNY's Mexican Studies Institute. To all of them, a big thank you for making this series possible. And these four Mexican films, Cinema Tropical has been throughout almost 20 years been involved of making sure that films find their way in the United States. And actually, documentary films are the hardest to find their way in the U.S. And that is the case of these four wonderful films. That despite that, they've been circulating in certain film festivals, I think they are still very undervalued for the power and the impact of their films. So for us, it's a great pleasure to be able to present these four films and to be able to share them with you. I want to introduce now our special guest, our panelist. I'll start with the wonderful Danira La Torre, who's become a powerhouse in Mexican cinema, particularly Mexican nonfiction cinema, as wearing many hats. She's been a producer of numerous films, including the Oscar shortlisted Midnight Family from 2018 by Luke Lorenzen, as well as the Sundance award-winning film El General from 2009 by Natalia Almada, and The Panzazo, which was from 2012, which was the second most seen documentary in the history of Mexico. She's also been very involved with the Morelia Film Festival. She was the head of the documentary film program at the festival as well, and also worked as a producer for the festival. And she's also been part of the board of trustees of the Ambulante Film Festival, as well as the Flaherty Film Seminar and Retreat, which we're screening as part of MexDocs. It's her debut feature. Welcome, Daniela. Next, we have with us Michelle Ivamen. She was Ivamen. She was born in Chihuahua in 1981, and she graduated in communication sciences, specializing in audiovisual production. She studied documentary film direction and writing and digital film photography direction at the Madrid Film Institute. In 2012, she directed her debut feature film, No hay lugar lejano, There is no place far away, which won the award for best documentary made by a woman at the Morelia Film Festival. Her second feature, which we're screening here at MexDocs, When I Close My Eyes, Cuando Cierro los Ojos, co-directed with Sergio Blanco, won the Best Documentary Award from Cine Latino and the Jose Rovirosa Award for Best Documentary Film in 2019. And her work has also been screened in the New York Times UpDoc series and at the series Viewfinder. Michelle, bienvenida, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And next we have Sergio Morkin. He was born in Argentina, but he's been living in Mexico for many years. He studied cinematography in Buenos Aires and graduated in 1995. And his acclaimed his debut feature, Oscar, from 2004, circulated around in numerous film festivals, included the Margaret Mead here in New York. That's where I met originally Sergio many years ago. He also designs and teaches documentary filmmaking workshops and is a project advisor for documentaries. His second documentary film, The Ginger Ninjas Ride Mexico from 2012, also played in numerous film festivals. He's also a founder of Lupe and Hijos Films, a production company that made The Charro of Toluquilla by director Jose Villalobos, another film that also had a very healthy film festival life. And his most recent documentary, Mari Carmen, which we're screening at MexDocs, has received many awards. Most recently, the Best Documentary Feature at the San Diego Latino Film Festival and the Audience Award at the Morelia Film Festival. Sergio, un gusto. Thank you, man. And then we also have Adriana Otero, who's a filmmaker from Mérida, Yucatan. She graduated from the School of Arts of Yucatan with a master's degree in production and teaching of visual arts. She has produced and directed several documentary shorts, including El Valor de la Tierra, The Value of the Earth, for which she won Best Documentary Short at the Caixé Tejidos Visuales Film Festival in 2015. She was awarded the PECTA Yucatan in 2014 and won the 2015 Municipal Youth Prize in the category Cultura, as well as a beneficiary of the Municipal Fund for Visual Arts and the FONCA in 2016. What Happened to the Beast, that she co-directed with Robin Canul, it's her debut feature, and we're screening at MexDocs. Adriana, ¿qué tal?
Thank you, Carlos, for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
A great pleasure. And moderating this wonderful panel of speakers, we have Laura Torres Rodríguez, who's an associate professor at the Department of Spanish and Portuguese at NYU, with a particular interest in Mexican literature and film. She's actually teaching right now a course in Mexican cinema. So I'll let Laura take over from here, and I'll be just assisting with some translation in case any of the speakers need it.
Thank you, Carlos, for the introductions. It is a pleasure for me to be able to have a conversation with this incredible group of filmmakers today. Before we start, I would like to remind the members of the audience that you can post your questions via Facebook or on the Zoom's chat section. So I would like to start saying that although these films are very different, no, they share a similar cinematic and political sensibility. They find forms of activism in unexpected places when even in everyday life activities and experiences. Also, they make a special emphasis on feminism and indigenous collectives experiences. So in this vein, I want to start directly with a general question to Daniela, the director of Retreat. And so you can also, with these questions, you can also talk about your film in general terms, But I was impressed by the fact that your film explores the articulation of collectives of women or of instances of feminist solidarity in what are traditionally conservative spaces. So how do you understand the place of religion in this context? Or how did you become interested in filming women in these Catholic retreats? Now, this is what the movie is about now. So maybe we can start with Daniela.
Gracias, Laura. Thank you so much. And Carlos, do you hear me well? You do. Good. So I think this is a really important question because it's something that I had to deal with my own prejudices the first time that I went to these Catholic retreat. I had heard about these Catholic retreat through Marina, who's the grandmother, the older character in the movie, for many, many years. She was a cook at a weekend house on my father, so it's been 20 years, and I had heard about these Catholic retreats for many, many years. It was her description of these plays was like these plays that gave her the strength, these female strength, the community, all these women together. But precisely, I always felt like, but this is a very restrictive, this is a very conservative place. Like, how can it be both things? When I decided to work on my first film, I was actually getting an MFA at SVA in New York. I decided that I wanted to try to go with them to these Catholic retreat. It wasn't easy to get in because it's a place that has like a very negative aura. It's a retreat that has been around for 250 years. It's a place that people in its surroundings speak about in these dark light. It's a place of penitence. There's all these stories about these penitents getting, blood, and all these older women, and the access was very, very restricted. It was because I was alone and I was part of these group of women that I was able to go in and shoot. And I guess I was faced with my own, prejudices and my own preconceptions of these places, because I arrived and I was like, how is it possible that a place that is so conservative, where these are the things that are being said, has something happening in parallel that is so powerful? And I feel that that's something that, religion historically in Latin America, and I'm sure in other parts of the world, it has created some sort of spaces of resistance for a lot of women. It has been the only place of female gathering that was allowed in small towns, in rural areas. I guess religion is also part of the social fabric. It's just part of their culture. So I just found that it was fascinating that if you have a gathering of women, it is a powerful experience. It's a very, very powerful experience to have 3,000 women together, exchanging ideas and exchanging experiences. And there is some sort of solidarity that happens. And what I found is that at the center of my movie, I wanted to show that these female collective gathering is a powerful experience. It doesn't matter necessarily the context. And obviously, I had to question if there's only one way of understanding feminism. There's a lot of organized group in rural areas that don't self-identify as feminist, but the way that they are working around understanding the role of women and the construction of that role is it's very powerful. So I really just wanted to kind of understand from a different perspective that is not necessarily from the big cities, in kind of unusual spaces where you would never think that these things are happening. What's that tension and those contradictions that are happening in these places of solidarity and female gathering? And as I said, the reason why I got interested in the retreat and everything is because I had a very close relationship with Marina. I've known her for 20 years. Obviously, I've known Perla, the granddaughter, since she was born. And I felt like there was like a dissonance between what she was telling me that this place was and what I've had seen and what I understood of these religious places. So I just had to understand why she felt that this was the place where she gathered her strength, where she found company. And I'm just going to finish with these. I think it's really interesting that a lot of the women that go to these plays, the first time that they go, there is a lot about convincing your friends, your female friends from your town and from your groups to go to these plays for the first time. A lot of them, their first time is an act of disobedience. They really brag about the first time I came, it was without my husband's permission. It's almost like if there was a first step in kind of giving themselves time and space just to be alone, leaving their houses and their animals. I'm sure none of the men are happy to stay behind for a week, taking care of the house and the animals. I always thought, well, the kids, they have to take them, right? Because that's a little too much. So just take the kids, whatever you want, but just take the kids. So there is a little bit of disobedience in kind of like the act of going to these plays. And I just found it fascinating that there was all these things and all these ambiguities and contradictions kind of surrounding a very traditional space.
Thank you. That was a wonderful answer. And I have, of course, like 100 follow-up questions, but I'm gonna do like a second question for Michelle, and then we can come back to some of those ideas. Let me see okay. Yes, Michelle, I have a question Michelle is the co-director of When I Shut My Eyes, no? About the experience of filming an entire documentary in Mazatec and Mixtec, no? So because the contemporary production of Mexican cinema in indigenous languages is growing, no? And so is the visibility of indigenous directors in documentary film. So what did the process entail for you as director? And why was the decision particularly important for the story that you are telling about the criminal justice system in Mexico?
Okay. Well, making this film and making it in their original languages, it was very important because of the omission of the system towards these communities. It was very important to have this space and this moment for them to express whatever they wanted to say in their own language, and have someone translator that also that was from their also from their community. So the communication, it will be the trust in the communication and the conversation, it will be best for the interviews. So, and also because of the omission of the authorities when they didn't have the interpreter in their penal and their criminal process. So it was very important for us that the whole movie was in their own language, just to give this space for them to say whatever they wanted to say and to express themselves. Because language is also, for me right now, to try to explain in English is kind of difficult, because all the difference and all the things that implies and a language, a mother tongue, that are not able sometimes to translate or to really have the same meaning and the same, it's difficult to really go deep under some circumstances, and having a criminal process is also difficult for me that I speak Spanish and that I kind of understand the system. For me, to understand some technical concepts of the procedure, it was difficult even for them. I guess it was also the one of the main objectives of the film, to try to translate this confusion and this how do you say it, incertidumbre.
Uncertainty.
Thank you. Have this in the whole movie was very important, because we thought that if we managed to give this sensation to the audience, it will be more effective to understand the importance of having translators in this process, in this criminal process. So that way we will make it the whole situation, it will be more personal, I think, more intimate for the audience to access to. So it was very important to have this movie in their original languages. And I don't know if the second question, I don't know if I answered. Sorry, I'm nervous. It's horrible for me to listen to me in English. So yeah, I'm very self-conscious.
Warm up questions. No, it's for getting something there. So it was great. No, thank you very much. No, yes, because it's a film about not being heard by the state, no, because of language too in many ways. So it was very, very interesting, the experience of hearing those testimonies. No. So I'm gonna continue with a question for Adriana, now that has a movie that has not a similar topic, but something that could be related to Michelle's comments. Adriana is the co-director of What Happened to the Bees. So the film places indigenous activisms at the forefront, no, of the fight for environmental justice in Mexico and also in Latin America. And the documentary combines a journalistic approach, if you want, which follows a report on the journey of Mayan activists Gustavo and Lady, with a very poetic use of images and editing that conveys, if you want, non-human rhythms. So how did you manage to balance or intertwine those two modes? One that is, if you want, more expository or I don't know, action-oriented, and the other that is more contemplative, And what were your discussions with your co-director, Robin Canul, like in this particular respect?
Yes, do the topic that is in the story, for me, it was very important that it had a solid informative support. And that's why journalism and investigation were fundamental as the basis of the film. But I didn't want it to be a report, but to have formed part of the cinematographic language, and that the audience not only knew a story, but also understood how complex it was, even if they had no previous knowledge about that. So it was precisely a balance, and it was a challenge too. In the end, with Robin, we work in a form of union, where he came from the journalism and I from the filmmaking. So there were decisions to had to made about what was the necessary information so that story could function and could be emotional, and that it generate a feeling of empathy with the viewer. And yes, there were moments of disagreement as to which sequences appear and which not, but it was something that we could pass, and we are happy with the results. And
we lost you there.
We also had advice from, and that oops, okay,
we lost you there for a minute or two. Could you repeat or wait? What should we do? Oh, you froze.
Okay. Okay. Yes. This was balance. Could you hear me now? Okay. Yes. It was a balance, and with Robin that worked that came from the journalism, and I from the filmmaking. We had to take decisions and had to be discuss about what the necessary information had to be in the story, and that could be emotional and achieve the feeling of empathy in the viewer. And there were moments difficult of disagreement, but we could pass it, and we are happy. And we have advice from scientific and the cinematographic part. We have advice for the editing, and that helped us a lot.
Yes. Yes, thank you, because the film has all this poetic use of landscape, and all this multisensory, haptic or multisensory images, that it in a way kind of evokes this web of life, and the reciprocity between the forest, the water, the air, the bees, the peacekeepers, so it was very interesting to see those like the action, the trips to Argentina, all those the arguments with the Mennonites communities, and suddenly this other part where we're more like evocative. No, it was a very beautiful film. So yes, maybe I'm gonna go now with a question for Sergio. A very straightforward question. Sergio, how did the fact that in your film, Mari Carmen, you were capturing the experience of an artist who is blind, affect your use of visual images and sound? I think that was very interesting in the film as well.
Una pregunta muy directa, Sergio. El hecho de que Mari Carmen, el documental, está retratando a una artista que es ciega, ¿cómo influyó eso en el uso de tus herramientas audiovisuales y sonoras en el documental? Sergio, ¿nos oyes? Estás en mute.
Bueno, en principio lo que intentamos hacer es... ¿Sí? ¿Se me escucha?
Ya te escuchamos, sí.
¿Sí se escucha? ¿Sí se me escucha?
Uh-huh.
¿Sí? Perfecto. En principio lo que intentamos hacer es acercarnos al sentimiento. No quisimos ilustrar la manera en que Mari Carmen ve, sino que quisimos acercarnos poéticamente a su mundo interior, a su sentir.
Okay. So in an initial attempt, we tried to get close to the feeling, not illustrate the way she sees, but rather a poetic approach to her interior world. Está medio fallando el...
Hay un por otro lado, ¿sí?
Creo que ahí sí.
¿Ahora?
Ahí estamos. On the other hand,
¿Sí estoy?
No, ¿quieres que volvamos? ¿Por qué no te reconectas y regresamos ahorita contigo? Porque está retrasado y está mal la señal. Yeah. Laura, you wanna...
Okay. Avísenme, por favor. A ver, ahora. Ok, me reconecto.
Sí. Okay. So we should I ask another question in the meantime?
Sure, and then we'll take it back from...
Okay, maybe or a general question, okay, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about how the films were received in the communities that were represented in them, or maybe the process of filming these documentaries together with the communities and seeing the reaction of the communities at the end of the process. And yeah, if you can talk a little bit about that, each of you, I don't know who wants to go first. Yeah, in the meantime, when we were...
I can start. Just let me know if you can hear me well. Good. So, I mean, it took me a really long time to finish these films, probably 5 years from like the first time I started shooting with them to when I finished. I feel like it was a process of, taking over and then abandoning the film and then trying to do it again and then abandoning the film. I guess one of the things that was really at the heart of the film is that my relationship with the main characters was very, very close, and I wanted to be true to them. I also wanted to, it's complicated to be in a double position of power. Obviously, I was behind the camera, I was making a film about them, but also I had known them for many years because Marina was the cook at my father's weekend house. So I had to be really, brave, and I had to be very clear about what my position was in portraying them. I also decided I didn't want to make an expose about these plays, that I really was interested in seeing these places through their eyes and through their experience, and just being very careful with the portrait of your characters, where you're close to them. So it's really hard for me to show them the film. I think the first time I showed them the film was, maybe a few years after I started editing. I came back to Marina and I showed her a few sequences of the retreat, and she couldn't stop crying when she watched them, just because it's such an important place for her. So I decided I was not going to show the film until the film was finished. So first I decided to show it to Perla. She's now in university, so she sometimes comes and stays with me for the weekend in the city. She's now in a city close to Mexico City, going to university. And it was incredible because I started shooting with her when she was 15 and now she's 20. So that's a really big time between, for someone who's coming of age. And it was incredible because she said, it's kind of shocking to think that that my ideas are still there, that I still think the same way. And with Marina, it was even harder because Joaquin, Marina's husband, died very close to when I finished the film. So it was for her kind of confronting her own experience, but also the image of Joaquin. So the first time that Marina saw it, and it was her decision, was with an audience at the Morelia Film Festival at the film's premiere, with all her family sitting at the theater. And she was very moved, and she felt like I was respectful to her image. So that was very important. But I think that what you're asking, it really hits on such an important spot, because our relationship to our characters and to the stories that we portray is at the center and at the heart of the films that we make. I remember reading one time these Decalogo, I don't know what the word is in English, by Victor Kosakowski. I don't exactly remember what it said, but it was something around, don't make films if you're a good person, or something like that. I mean, it's very Victor Kosakowski, but I was like so troubled by the idea that you just had to kind of separate yourself as a filmmaker from the subject matter and from the communities. And I think it's an ongoing discussion. I don't think it's something that we have one answer or the other. But I love the idea to continue discussing these idea of where do you position yourself with your characters and with the story that you're telling, because you are in a position of power to tell that story.
Yeah, and I'm also curious about not only how they reacted to the content of the film, but also the form, because they are experimental documentaries, no? And they have their own pace and their own. So I'm curious about that too, no? If you can add that to your answers. But for example, when you were using your use of the religious iconography, no, visually, no, you have some images that are very striking and go into that direction. So I was wondering if that's something that you were thinking when you were, if you were thinking about your audience, when you were about your protagonist, when you were doing those choices, formal choices or not, or that was very interesting. Do you have this La Corona de Espinas, no, that kind of
I mean, I think it's also interesting because some of the formal choices that we're making, they're not necessarily being seen as formal choices by our audiences or by our characters. They're being perceived as a much more experience-based memory. It's there every day, even if you, and yes, of course. I mean, the formal choices that we make, form is obviously also content. And that content also determines the way in which you experience that story. For me, it was very important to understand these religious retreat as sort of a space for ideas and for questioning ideas. It wasn't really like the everyday life. You have the everyday life of them at their houses and what happens in kind of like a more chronological way. And even if the retreat is a physical space, for me, it was more a space of ideas and a space to kind of experience from their point of view these contradictions and these tension that is created by these two experiences that are happening at the same time. So I don't know if the communities or necessarily our characters are experiencing or seeing these formal choices as formal choices, rather than just kind of a flow into their memories and the way that they remember these places. So maybe the Corona de Espinas, the crown of thorns, it's something that they've done for 15 years. It's something that is part of their experience, even if we see it as a completely religious image that we've seen for hundreds of years. So I like these difference between perception of the films that we're making.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to Sergio now that you're here, and yeah, to your answer.
Ok, perfecto. Fue un proceso interesante el de trabajar con una persona ciega, porque a mí en principio lo que más me intrigaba de la historia era la ceguera. Poder acercarnos al mundo de la ceguera, a la percepción desde la ceguera. Pero lo interesante del proceso fue que la mirada se volvió hacia otros lugares que no tienen que ver con la ceguera, que tienen que ver con la humanidad de todos nosotros, ¿no? Entonces ahí es donde me empecé a identificar con Mari Carmen y a entender que a lo que ella me pasa a mí, o nos pasa a muchos de nosotros. Y la película, aunque también es un acercamiento a la ceguera, a la percepción y al sentir de la ceguera, es un acercamiento a temas existenciales que todos y todas tenemos, como la necesidad de ser amado, la relación con los padres, la complejidad de las relaciones, el qué estoy haciendo en la vida, estoy haciendo estoy siendo quien soy o no estoy siendo quien soy. Yo creo que toca temas que son de todos, ¿no? Y eso me acercó mucho mucho más al personaje y me impulsó con más fuerza a contar esta historia.
Carlos, I think. No, estás en mute.
Sorry. It was an interesting process to work with a blind person. I was intrigued originally by the blindness. That was my entering point to the project, by the world of blindness. But in the process, the gaze became something different. My perspective changed, and it became about other human aspects. And I started identifying much more with Mari Carmen and what she goes through. And basically what happens to her is it happens to us. So it became a more rather than blindness, it was more about some existentialist topics like the need to be loved, the complexity of relationships, the relationship with the parents. So that way I got much closer to the character.
Thank you. So maybe we can come back to the question that I asked before, and maybe Adriana and Michelle want to answer the question about the reception of the film in the communities or the relationship with the communities, in the process of making the film.
Okay, well, in my case, what happened to the Beast premiere at festivals in Mexico
in October 2019. And from that moment, we have made some screenings in Yucatan, Campeche, Quintana Roo, the Yucatan Peninsula, with the presence of the characters, which has become a very interesting dynamic when the film ends. And between the conversations I have had with Don Gustavo and Doña Lady, we realized that the film moves a necessity in the viewer to help, and this is great for them. One day, Lady told me that she thought that many things were not said in the film, but it is very difficult to condense such a complex topic in 1 hour, more or less. But despite that, we realized that it does provoke something. And another reality is exhibitions and the theaters in Mexico. It had to be postponed from August of this year to March and 2021. So that has delayed us in our plans with the communities. But we are taking it back little by little. And we have had online trainings in Mexico and in other countries, and we have done very well. But we know that face-to-face community screenings are necessary, and we hope that we can achieve that soon.
Well, something similar happened to when I shut my eyes, when we finished the festival distribution that is still going on, fortunately. We program special presentations in the Yale, also in Marcelino's Pinotepa Nacional, and also Adela's community. But the thing with Adela's community is that the authorities, the traditional authorities of the town, of the place, are involved in the incarceration of Adela. So it's kind of complicated to show it there. And what we did is we have a screening in Oaxaca, and we invite Adela, and she came with Germán, her husband. And because they are already out, the judge decided that they didn't have the el proceso debido. I don't know the translation.
The due process.
The due process. So because of that, they got out the jail. The judge decided that, and then we in this presentation we have Adela and Germán seen it in the big screen for the first time, because they were in jail before. We didn't have a presentation with them like Daniela did with their protagonist. So when we have this experience, it was a very complicated. It was very painful. I guess we opened the wound again for her. It was also beautiful because the people who were there were really empathicos with the with the feeling. In general, we all in the room felt as and the pain of Adela. So it was really really a special presentation, I guess. And we haven't done the presentations in Pinatepa and the other towns. Huautla, Jimenez, we want to show that there because it's a town nearby Adela's, but because of COVID, we couldn't manage to do it in these presentations.
that is devastating. I'm sorry. But okay, I have a question from Jens that maybe I can combine with another question I had for you. And it's about, it's for all of you, and it says, although they are very different, no, your films also seem to coincide in a more observational stance, no, the observational camera, in terms of the camera-subject relation. Would you say this represents a more general tendency in Mexican documentary, or is it more a coincidence and one related to each other of for very particular subjects? And maybe my question was it's also related because I have I don't know, when I was watching the documentaries for the first time, I thought about Tatiana West, of course, no? So yeah, maybe we can talk, if you can talk about this observational camera and maybe your influences also too, inside in Mexico and outside of Mexico as well. But yeah, I think it was striking, this combination with an observational camera and a very poetic editing. And you all had that, no? And also the testimonies, the testimonies of the protagonists in voicing off, no? So it was very interesting, those communalities, no? That maybe is part that, because this is maybe was the reason why Carlos chose them, or not. I think it could be like a biggest trend now in documentary in Mexico.
I was going to say, Laura, that I'd love to hear Carlos. You know, Carlos, do you think Mexican documentary has a very strong observational cinema verite component?
I don't think necessarily. I think there's different types of documentary. I mean, in this case, I guess the four of them coincided. I think probably it's kind of a trend in certain group of films and filmmakers, and I could probably in Morelia. Probably to, you know, we can see more of those films, but I think you know, the production in Mexico is so vast that there's a bit of everything. You know, there's more traditional documentaries that usually they go more for television, you know, more. So I think there's different approaches. There's different approaches in Mexican nonfiction. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me.
Well, maybe what this was important for your film, or the way, I think that's maybe the question, no? Yeah, like what effects were you seeking in your viewers, no, with these particular ways of framing your stories, no, beyond if it's a coincidence or not, no, but yeah, that was Jen's question.
Well, I'm just going to say that I completely agree that there's just an incredible tradition of nonfiction, and having been part of the Morelia selection committee for so many years, you know, it was also incredible to see a lot of more experimentation and kind of formal risk-taking in formal decisions in Mexican documentary and nonfiction. And, you know, I was going to go back to these question about kind of more experimental ways to edit and kind of less conventional forms of storytelling, and how that connects with different audiences, or maybe even your own characters. And I was going to say that sometimes it might seem that these formal decisions might keep someone out of the film, but I think it's the opposite. I think these experimentation and these different possibilities, they just create different experiences towards one subject. So I think it's, in terms of, it's not necessarily a barrier, but I think it's a way of entering a story from a different perspective, and connecting that to the way that I decided to shoot. I think very soon, my first shoot was at the retreat. I was surrounded by 3,000 women. Everything was happening at the same time. And I think just my way of protecting myself was focusing on very specific details for a long time. It was so overwhelming, everything that was happening, that I could spend 2 hours just like looking at dust, right? And listening to everything that was happening, or just focusing on hands, or a way that the crown of thorns was falling onto a girl's face. And I think it's also, I really wanted these faces to represent other faces, to think that maybe all these other faces could be Marina, or all these young faces could be Perla. And as Marina says at the beginning of the story, she says, you know, each one of us as women, we're all a story. And to kind of think beyond these faces, that these faces just kind of represent the whole story behind them. So that's why I decided to focus on a lot of small details, kind of close-ups, and these intimacy that they're experiencing in terms of their experience, but with other women, rather than looking at the big picture and looking at thousands of women and all these things happening. I felt that was more a mirror of the experience that they were having amongst themselves and with themselves in these space of silence.
Yes, thank you. I want to share before we go to see if Sergio and Adriana or Michelle has something to say about this aesthetic ways of filming. I want to share with you, Daniela, an opinion, or the opinion of Guadalupe about your film. And she says, I think Retiro achieves a point of view where viewers can see the experience as it is, and now and not through a prejudiced eye. I feel that the power of the experience is felt, as Daniela said, and the solidarity, empowerment of women by women beyond the context of religion. So now we have like an opinion from the public.
That's really nice. Thank you for sharing, Laura.
Yeah, and that was Guadalupe Garcia de Quintana. So yes, I don't know if Adriana, Michelle, or Sergio want to say something about Jen's question.
Yep. Well, I like that in my films, I can show a closer look at my protagonists in their stories, trying to put the viewer into the worldview of the communities. Perhaps that is why an observational look is felt in the film. And I don't think I have a specific filmmaker as a reference, but I really like Mexican documentaries. I think I learn from each of them, and as well other filmmakers, foreign directors, and also a bit of the movement in the Nuevo Cine Latinoamericano, making films with the sense subversive, for example. So I think that's my way right now in the filmmaking.
Michelle or Sergio?
I can answer this question. Well, the process to have a formal proposition or proposal for the documentary was coming from the testimonies of Adele and Marcelino, because they were telling us all their memories and all the things that make a connection with the exterior, having this kind of a freedom in the mind through these images and through these emotional connections with the land, with the celebrities, with the traditions, with the food. So it was very important for us to have this, how do you say, universe in the movie, and have also, because it's also an interpretation of us, of Sergio and I, we were trying to make a kind of a feeling of having a dream, or being like in more sense of being inside their minds. So that was the objective, el objetivo that we we try to achieve with the formal treatment of the documentary. And also I understand that some of the new documentaries are related or have this influence by Tatiana Hueso, because she's a big, I admire her work, and she's a big, I think she opened in a way, not new things of saying, but new things of not new things of saying, but new personal way of getting close to a very complex subject. So I think that's for me one of the things that I love about her documentaries. And it's funny because some of her influence directors are also the things that we were watching when we were making that When I Shut My Eyes, that is the Pardon or the Dardenne, the brothers, Dardenne brothers, but also we were, I guess, also for me as Adriana, I don't have a specific director that I admire. I admire a lot of directors, so it's kind of difficult for me to be conscious of which one I like better or which one I feel close to. But I guess when we were doing this documentary, we watched a lot of Pedro Costa, and we were watching Wiseman also. Some of the documentaries, we were watching Kiarostami. So I guess that kind of movie, in that kind of cinema, it was influenced in the movie indirectly. I remember that we were watching these directors when we were making When I Shut My Eyes, and some of the influence that I remember really the first time I was like really impressed by cinema, by the making cinema, was by watching one Kubrick is one of the when I saw 2001 it was like the big movie that I saw the first time that I understand that that cinema was more than just a traditional way of telling stories. So it made a big impression of me. But it also is kind of difficult right now to say which one influenced in this particular movie.
Yeah. No, but I think it works really that dreamy kind of editing. No, it's good to also to escape incarceration, no, because it's a film about the experience of being incarcerated too. So I think it was a very, very beautiful contrast. No, so yeah, I don't know if Sergio wants to say something about that. We have some other questions from the audience that we can also attend. I think maybe we have to translate.
Sí.
¿Quieres hablar al respecto de la parte observacional
Sí.
y tus influencias?
Sí. Yo siento que el documental, a diferencia de las películas de ficción, es un proceso que está vivo todo el tiempo, hasta el último día de edición. Entonces, también encontrar el lenguaje y la estética tiene que ver con el proceso que uno está haciendo a lo largo del camino. En mi caso con Mari Carmen, yo comencé haciendo un seguimiento de personaje, pero yo tenía muchas ganas de experimentar un abordaje, de hacer un documental con un abordaje más parecido a una película de ficción. Como que tenía esa necesidad y era esa etapa que me estaba tocando. Y este proyecto me regaló esa posibilidad, ¿no? Cuando a mí lo que terminé de Mari Carmen, sus escritos autobiográficos, que son muy poderosos, son cinematográficos, son muy arriesgados, muy íntimos. Y ahí cuando leí sus escritos decidí entrarle a este proyecto, casarme con este proyecto, porque hacer una película son muchos años y mucho compromiso, y es una decisión importante cuando dice sí, quiero, ¿no? Pero yo creo que con respecto al lenguaje, en general siempre me ha tocado hacer documentales de un seguimiento muy íntimo con mis personajes, ¿no? Como que es un poquito lo que la vida me
Dame un segundo.
Sí.
The documentary, in opposition to fiction, is it's a process that's pretty much alive all the way through the ending, the very ending, all the throughout the editing process and to the very end. So in that sense, the language, the film language and the aesthetics, it's a live process that you're constantly working around it. In Mari Carmen specifically, you know, I started following her and I was doing a character portrait. But this project gave me the opportunity to approach the project as a fiction film. And when I read her text, you know, they were very very cinematographic, very visually. You know, it gave me even a bigger chance to get into the project. You know, it's a big decision once you commit to a project like this, because you know you're gonna follow the character for a long time. And I've been lucky because in general, in general, I've had an intimate approach to my characters.
Entonces, en este aspecto de ir acercándote al personaje, de ir conociéndolo, generar esta intimidad, esta confianza mutua, porque es un proceso en donde hay una entrega por parte del personaje, pero porque también hay una contención de nuestro lado y una relación muy auténtica, muy honesta. Yo creo que estos elementos son los que van dándole vida a la película y empiezan a ser aplicados en el lenguaje. Entonces es bien interesante porque tiene esta magia el documental de que te sorprende, ¿no? Te sorprende todo el tiempo. Como autor, a mí me transforma. Como que cada historia que me toca contar es por algo que me toca aprender en ese momento de mi vida, ¿no? Y en general los documentales llegan de casualidad, entre comillas, ¿no? No es que elijo una historia, sino que aparece en el camino un personaje que me empieza a despertar fibras y cosas que me interesan contarle al mundo y a la vez indagar yo para un desarrollo personal. Entonces yo creo que es interesante, ya quizás me estoy desviando un poquito, pero este poder curativo que tiene el hacer documentales tanto para los autores como para los personajes, como para el público, ¿no? Y cuando eso sucede creo que se hacen películas profundas, verdaderas, íntimas, honestas.
So in this aspect, you know, it's getting closer to the character to generate that intimate relationship that stems from a very authentic and honest position. And then all of these elements is what give life to the film. And this is what we apply to the film. And that is basically the magic of documentary, to be transformed in this relationship of learning more about your character, but also the other way around, to create this solid relationship. And you know, the projects don't come to you very casually. Something you have to probably learn at that moment. So that's the magic of the documentary: learning and being transformed by the film. And you know, it's about also personal development, and it's a curatorial power of cinema, the curatorial power of documentary filmmaking. That goes both ways for the subject, but also for the filmmaker.
Thank you, Carlos, for the wonderful translation, and thank you, Sergio, for the answer. So no, and I think it's more than an observational camera. I think it's a performative camera in many ways too. No, I think that there's something very interesting in your documentaries about this. It's not just like detached, but also performing stuff. No, I don't know, but that's another thought. Something that came. We have a question for Adriana. No. Can you tell us more about Lady's recent award? No, she won a big international environmental prize a few days ago. So if you want to comment that respect.
Claro, lo voy a decir en español. Bueno, pues hace una semana le dieron el premio, el mayor reconocimiento a Lady Page por todo el trabajo de defensa del medio ambiente. Este es pues, conocido como el Premio Nobel del Medio Ambiente, y bueno, es fantástico que lo haya podido obtener. Claro, es un logro que no es únicamente de Lady, sino es un logro de Lady acompañado de toda la comunidad y de otras, bueno, organizaciones, aliados, ¿no? que han sido parte de, pues, de toda esta lucha. Y bueno, nosotros estamos súper contentos con con que uno de nuestros protagonistas haya tenido este reconocimiento, porque también, bueno, a la película ayuda a que más gente se interese en verla, y esto pues obviamente causa que mucha más gente se entere de lo que está sucediendo y conozca todo todo lo que ha pasado las comunidades y Lady a través de estos años, ¿no? Y bueno, y nada más como para agregar, la película pues obviamente funciona como un acompañamiento a la lucha que todavía sigue, no es algo que se haya terminado. De hecho, parte de nuestro trabajo con la película, o de lo que nos toca, nuestro compromiso, es tener una campaña de impacto. Y pues bueno, queremos lograr no solamente cambiar mentalidades, pensamientos e informar, sino que se logren pues incluso modificar leyes, que sería fantástico, ¿no? Y prohibir las fumigaciones aéreas en la península de Yucatán, en todo México, y pues y también hacer valer pues la justicia, ¿no? Que pues es precisamente el logro que tuvieron las comunidades, y por eso también se les da este reconocimiento, pero pues es algo que no se ejecuta. Entonces, pues es un gran impulso, y estamos súper felices por Lady y por las comunidades por este increíble reconocimiento.
Okay, I'm going to do a brief summary. Just a week ago, Lady Page, she received a big environmental prize, which is actually known as the Nobel Prize for Environmental Work. And you know, she received it for all the work that she's done, but not only by herself. It's a communal, and it's a communal achievement through the work of communities and allies. And we were very happy that one of our protagonists received this prize, because the film tells and helps the cause. You know, through our film, people can learn what they've gone through, what they've gone through, and the film is a companion to the ongoing fight, the ongoing struggle to change not only perceptions and mentalities, but also modify legislation, and also, more importantly, forbid aerial fumigations in Yucatan, but also in all of Mexico. And also respect rule of law. So we're very happy on her way.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm going to combine a couple of questions that are more related to the to how it is for you now to make documentaries in Mexico right now, no? Because of course I personally found like Daniela said, no, and Sergio, no, that documentary form is the most exciting and innovative film form in Mexico right now, no? As is showcased by your films. But yeah, no, the film distribution and exhibition spaces are still very limited in Mexico. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the challenges, no, or that you face when you try to funding or circulating or distributing your films. And I'm going to combine this question with one for the audience about the impact of the recent cuts and changes on film funding from the Mexican federal government no? And are the filmmakers, are you concerned that it will affect your work? And on top of that, there's another question about what projects are you actually working on, and how has the pandemic affected their work? That triple whammy of the pandemic, the cuts, and the difficult context of the circulating films in Mexico in this moment. So maybe talk about this panorama, or you can that's some.
Okay, I'm going to talk. I think that the finance topic is always complicated, especially for documentaries related to biodiversity and environment, like What Happened to the Bees. But fortunately, we had support from crowdfunding and for some organizations, people that collaborate and the IMCINE. And in our experience, the issue of distribution has been very important. At first, I was looking for opportunities for a company to want to distribute their film, but it was not possible. I think the distributors already have their own projects. They know what films are going to distribute each year. So it is very difficult to get into them. So we decide together with a beautiful dream work team to be our distributors, at least in Mexico. And we found Abeja Cine. And this year we obtained the F-Cine for distribution. And in that sense, we are very lucky to be able to have an opportunity to move our film. And well, the situation of culture and the cuts is something that worries a lot. And I think we have two options: or we stop to making films, or we resist and try to continue producing. I don't know, it's very difficult. And at the moment, I'm exhibiting following the impact campaign of What Happened to the Bees, and moving another short film titled Snake's Mouth that premiered a few months ago. And thinking about the following projects, I still don't have something very concrete, but there are some ideas and that I am developing.
Thank you, Adriana. Michelle or Sergio, Daniela?
I think the last maybe 15 years, because of these funds that we used to have with IMCINE and all these initiatives, also Ambulante and some other convocatorias calls that fund documentaries, because of these initiatives that also we have the opportunity to have more diversity in the contents of the documentary. So I think it's a reflection of that interest of also the public institutions, but also the society, the sociedad civil, that is organizing and doing all this to move to not only to fund new projects, but also to distribute it. Like Ambulante is a big example for that. But it's still a little, we need to do more for distribution. I know that there's a lot of interest in outside Mexico City that wanted to see these contents, and right now they have the options because everything is online. But before we had the pandemic, it was really difficult unless you saw it on Ambulante and other initiatives that are local initiatives. So distribution, I think, for me is the most difficult thing to do in Mexico City, because not in Mexico City, in Mexico, in the whole country, because not only you have to, in order to be a successful documentary, you have to be in these big festivals. So if you're not, because either way, because the competition is too high or whatever, if you are not in them, it's more difficult for you to distribute your documentary. So it's kind of, this is the opportunities are smaller for some documentaries, and there's still a good documentaries that que creo que la accesibilidad debería ser mejor para ellos, ¿no? But we have to work in this. I'm sorry.
Oh, I wasn't saying that I think accessibility should be better for those.
Yeah. So yes, that's a big issue that we have to work in Mexico. I know there's some initiatives that is a good sign, but it's still a lot of work to do. And now with the pandemic, I think that is changing also. And yes, I'm very worried about the funds. It's a very un momento muy incierto for.
It's a very there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a very uncertain moment.
Yeah, because I don't know. Maybe the others producers and directors had another experiences, but for me was always like step by step. Funding documentaries was like have funding for development, and then funding for production, and then for post-production. So it was like, you know, like a very slow process. So still there are some other options that I think we have to also move towards that. But yeah, I'm very worried about what is going to happen in Mexico, because all the quality that we're having right now in documentary and also in fiction, but more in documentary, I think is gonna, I don't know, is going to be different after the pandemic. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would add that I think we're really going through a very critical moment, not only because of the disappearances of the funding specifically for certain type of films, voices, and you know, types of representation, but also because filmmakers have been accused of snobs, of corruption, of using the funds in badly. And if you take these funds out of the industry, then the only thing that's left is the market. And when market determines the content of what we do, it's always going to serve whatever we think the market wants. And there is no space for exploration and experimentation and diversity of voices and communities that are underrepresented. It just kills a big part of what we've achieved. I was recently moderating a conversation about the two first films of Everardo González and Rigoberto Pérez Cano at Cine Oaxaca. And it was their first films. It was 18 years ago. It was 1 year before Ambulante started. It was like the year that Morelia started. And I really wanted to push them, like, what happened in these 18 years that, you know, our films are not called shorts, or people are not asking you, like, when are you going to make a real film? Because what you did is obviously a documentary. That's not really a film, right? And we were really talking about synergy. It was a very incredible moment where a lot of things happened at the same time. There was like places of exhibition that was building audiences, and there were filmmakers that were interested in telling stories like Quince en Sachila, which is a fiesta, a quinceañera party, right? With shot on film that was just looking back to your like own communities, because there was something interesting to portray there, rather than than thinking outside, there was an openness suddenly between Mexican filmmakers and filmmakers from other parts of the world to exchange ideas and formal ways and experimentation. And even if I'm worried about these specific moments, also because of how we're looking at these streaming platforms as our only saviors, and we think that there's a lot of opportunities in these streaming platforms, they also respond to the market, and they can be as conservative as a government like the one we have, even if it doesn't promote itself as conservative. But I also feel like sometimes these moments where there's only a few places where we think exhibition and distribution will happen are also opportunities for whatever, you know, resistance is going to be created. Like 18 years ago, there was also something very one way, and then suddenly there was like spaces of independent, showing independent cinema and festivals, and it was proven that there was an audience for other types of films. I really do believe that this is a time where these other more independent places are going to come up in streaming platforms where there's like a closer contact with our audiences. But so I feel torn about these moments, but I also feel like these moments kind of provoke and demand a lot of new ideas and innovative ways of thinking of filmmaking and distribution and showing the things we do.
Thank you, Daniela. That was great, and thank you. And there's a last question for Sergio, and it's about your motivation. No, so I'm gonna read it in Spanish, and es de Francisco González Piña, and he's asking, ¿cómo mantenerse motivado a seguir haciendo documental con los desafíos que conocemos? ¿Por qué seguir? No, and it's related to what we were saying before, no, but it's more specific about how do you keep. Well, Daniela's message was also about motivation. No? Where do you find your motivation in this difficult economic and political landscape? But yeah, it's. Sí, Sergio.
Sí, es buena pregunta porque sí es muy cuesta arriba levantar una película, terminar una película. Pero a mí en lo personal es mi forma de aportar algo en el mundo, ¿no? Digamos, es mi forma de relacionarme y de comunicarme con el mundo con el intento de sembrar una semilla que sirva para algo, ¿no? Entonces, creo que ese es un poco el motor que a mí me impulsa, es ese entusiasmo por una nueva historia que me emociona a mí, que me dan ganas de abrirla al mundo, y eso me empuja a entrarle a un proyecto nuevo, a seguirle y a terminarlo, ¿no? Es como un entusiasmo. Cuando uno está dentro sí se vuelve muy intenso el proceso. Es un matrimonio de varios años, pero creo que hay un motor que tiene que ver con el corazón de uno y con la necesidad de canalizar esta obra que nos toca, ¿no? Que nos elige para que le demos vida, ¿no?
It's a good question. It's it's a very uphill battle to make a film and more so to finish it. But it's my way to give something to the world. It's my way to plant a seed to the world, and the way I communicate with the world. So it's that enthusiasm for a new story that I want to share with a larger audience. That is the drive. That's the passion that drives me. But it's an intense process. It's a marriage for several years. It's a commitment for several years. But that's what drives me to continue to do it.
Right. I think we can end the conversation on that note. No. Thank you all. We ran up out of time. Yeah. So thank you all for attending this event, and to the filmmakers and the film's protagonists for sharing their stories with us. And please go and watch the films now if you have and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. No, I don't know if Carlos wants to say something, but
Well, thank you so much, Laura, and to our great panelists. Muchas gracias a Michelle, Daniela, Sergio, y Adriana. And to all of you who are watching Facebook and here in Zoom, please, these are 4 wonderful documentary films about very different subjects. And so we invite you. They're going to be streaming through next Wednesday, cinematropical.com/MexDocs, MEXDOCS. And so hope you can watch them all. And again, thank you for everything. And until next time, al siguiente.